City, on ESPN News, on ESPN Radio. The telephone number, 888-SAY-ESPN. So give us a call. I'm going to try to get the calls as quickly as I can because we've got some guests coming up. I'll set the table for you, all the different things, hopefully, I'm going to touch on over the next couple hours. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. 888-SAY-ESPN is the telephone number. We've got Jay Bilas coming up at the bottom of the hour. Duke, North Carolina, in a Sonic blockbuster tonight at 9 p.m. on ESPN. There are a handful of college basketball games that you circle the calendar for. It is appointment television if you're a college hoops fan. During the regular season, during conference tournament season, every time Duke and North Carolina play, this is one of those circle the calendar. It's appointment television. And Dan Schulman, Jay Bilas, Maria Taylor, they'll have the call tonight of Duke, North Carolina, and we're going to talk to Jay Bilas coming up at the bottom of the hour. At the top of the next hour, Jeff Passan, who broke the story yesterday of Manny Machado signing the $300 million contract in San Diego. Not only are we going to talk to him about that, we'll talk to him about Bryce Harper and where he's going next. We'll also talk to him about all these other free agents, because it almost seems like there's this attitude that as long as Manny Machado and Bryce Harper sign, all's right with the world. Well, don't tell that to Marwin Gonzalez. Don't tell that to some of these other guys that probably feel like this slow, dragging process of free agency for the rest of them. Some really good baseball players that are still without jobs. We'll find out where some of those guys are going. Le'Veon Bell is not going to be transitioned by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So football free agency gets a jump start before the free agent market even opens in the NFL. We now know that the bidding will be open for Le'Veon Bell. So we'll talk about that with you at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-SAY-ESPN. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. And I'm going to start with Manny Machado. You know, I don't get a chance to do these shows all that often, and it's rare for me that a story like that breaks within 24 hours of me being able to talk about it. So I was excited when I saw this break yesterday that I was going to be in here to talk about it. You know, it's funny. In this era of instantaneous responses on Twitter, on Instagram, whether you host a talk show, you're on SportsCenter, whatever it is, there was a time, I used to be a talk show host regularly. Now I'm a play-by-play guy about 95% of the time. I still get a chance to host these talk shows from time to time. Always excited to do it when these stories happen. But we live in a world now where you want the instantaneous reaction to what happens in the world of sports. So yesterday when the Manny Machado news breaks, my first thought is, I got to get something on Twitter. I have an opinion, and I want to throw it out there. Now, my thought used to be, back when I hosted talk shows regularly 20 years ago, that, well, let me read a little bit. You know, maybe there are some, circumstances that I don't quite know about. Let's see what the length of the contract is, what the money is. Anybody else going to San Diego? What may have driven a guy like Manny Machado to take this deal? But yesterday, just in the moment that the contract is signed, I go to Twitter and put my opinion out there, and my opinion at the time, and I guess I'm kind of proud that 24 hours later, I think my opinion holds. What I immediately tweeted the moment that Manny Machado's contract to the San Diego Padres was announced was, perfect for Machado. I assume he got his money. He did. The weather is always perfect. He'll be able to play in complete relaxation, and he will never have to run to first if he doesn't want to, because no one will care and no one will notice. And 24 hours later, after all of the different opinions I've heard, read, all the different circumstances of the Padres' supposed incredible farm system, the fact that they still think they might be in it for Bryce Harper, none of that has changed my opinion of why Manny Machado took this deal and why he went to San Diego. And welcome to the world of Robinson Cano, complete baseball obscurity if you're Manny Machado. You know, hey, look, with all due respect to everyone in San Diego, and God bless your Padres, if you're a Padres season ticket holder, you just signed one of the top 10 players in baseball, you get to go and watch him. None of us will care. The rest of America, certainly east of the Mississippi, now takes Manny Machado and bids him adieu and says, you know what? Go into the witness protection program of Major League Baseball, because you are now signing up to play on a team that hasn't had but one winning season since 2008. Since they played the Yankees in the 98 World Series, they've won one playoff game. Not one series, one game. Now, I have heard, and for whatever these rankings are worth, that so many think that the Padres minor league system is the number one minor league system in baseball. that they have more talent in the pipeline than any team in baseball. Do you think for 1 second that's why Manny Machado signed this contract? Manny Machado signed this contract. If you put a top 10 list up as to why he signed this contract, reasons 1 through 8 would be the money, 9 and 10 would be the weather, and that's about it. He is never allowed, as long as he laces him up in San Diego, to spend one moment talking about winning. I don't want to hear the word winning or win come out of what would be the very disingenuous mouth of Manny Machado. Because you didn't sign this contract for anything other than you wanted a soft seat with more guaranteed money than anybody else was willing to offer you, and you could run to first, you could hustle, you could not run to first, you could not hustle, you could hit 30 home runs, 35 home runs, 25 home runs. Nobody's going to care. If you really cared about winning, if you really cared about competing, if you really cared about the spotlight, if you really cared about showing us you could deal with pressure, the last place in the world you are signing is San Diego. But if you just want to be a baseball player with $300 million in the bank on vacation, hey, you picked the perfect spot. So go to San Diego, farewell. You are the next version of Robinson Cano. Robbie Cano, who was a lock Hall of Famer with the Yankees, playing in championship games and championship series and World Series, and now sayonara. Because he was in the witness protection program in Seattle. Now he's back in New York with, the JV of the two teams in New York. Now we'll see if the Mets become a team this year that, maybe overachieves and Cano gets to play in a little bit more of the spotlight. But Manny Machado took the money. Manny Machado took the sunshine. Manny Machado took zero pressure, and we are sending him on his way. Because there's nothing about this deal that you could convince me that this guy cares at all about winning. Now, God bless the Padres. You got a superstar. They did what they're supposed to do as an organization. This is in no way a reflection on the Padres. The Padres went out and overpaid, in my opinion, coming up to that $300 million price tag. They did what they had to do to get a player like Machado. That's why the Yankees never even made an offer. They never even put pen to paper because they knew they were never going to approach that price tag, nor did they need to. Manny Machado, for them, was a luxury item. For the Padres, it's their lifeblood now. I mean, it's what they're going to build their whole organization around. But what would worry me a little bit, if I were San Diego, and if I were a fan of the Padres, ask yourself what the motivation was for this guy to take your money. Because you have no choice but to now build your organization, build everything you want to do around a guy that took your money because he doesn't care about winning. Ultimately, he didn't really care whether your organization wins or loses. He just wanted his $300 million. And whoever was willing to guarantee him that's where he was going. So he is the purest version of a free agent mercenary. And I also have heard plenty of guys say, hey, good for him. These guys are all one-man corporations. These guys have a right in free agency to go after as much money as they can get it while you can. If he's all about the paycheck, I've got no problem with that. And if that's your philosophy, hey, I got no problem with that too. That could be your philosophy. My philosophy would be, I would like to think that the guys on my team care about winning. I would like to think that the guys on my team that I'm spending that kind of money for want to be in my organization because they feel like winning is important. How could anyone look at what the Padres have been for the better part of the last 20 years and say, there's my best chance to go win a championship? I got to get on that team. I got to get with that organization. Look at the wealth of talent up and down the road. They don't have a pitcher in their starting rotation with an ERA of under 4.2 in the National League, where the pitcher still hits. Maybe not for long, but the pitcher still hits. So to me, I'm asking myself long and hard questions about the motivation of the guy I'm giving $300 million to. Why is he taking my money? Why does he want to come play for my organization? And I guess if you're San Diego, at the end of the day, you're probably saying we have no choice. In order to get a player like this, we have to look at what the market says he is worth, and we have to go the extra yard, overpay, and hope for the best. And hope that just his pure talent rises above the fact that he doesn't care about winning. Some guys are just so good that they can still perform in spite of the fact that winning is not really their highest priority. And Machado is certainly in that category. He will put up some numbers out there, but if you're thinking he's going to make that crucial hustle play, trying to beat out a double play in the bottom of the ninth inning where the winning run is at third base, think again. He ain't trying to stretch a single into a triple. He's going to turn triples into singles by standing at home plate and jogging to first. And look, he's not the only guy that does that. There's a wealth of examples in Major League Baseball of guys that don't run hard to first, but not all of them make $300 million. And not all of them are the guy that the organization is going to build their entire world around. And that is now what he is. And that is what they have signed up for. And 5 years from now, when he has that opt-out, how many games do you think Manny Machado will have won? One interesting note, the over-under for the Padres in Vegas went from like 76.5 to 78.5 after Manny Machado signed a contract. $300 million bought you 2 wins as far as the guys in San Diego are concerned because they have no pitching. So they gave $300 million to a guy that, in my opinion, says loud and clear, your actions speak louder than anything. And there is probably never a clearer window into the heart and mind and priorities of a player than what he signs for and where he signs for it. And Manny Machado took the absolute most money from an organization that for the past 20 years has been largely, if not completely, irrelevant and won 66 games last season. And other than winning 90 games, I think, in 2010, since 2007, they haven't gotten out of the mid-70s in wins. They have been a perennial below 500 team. Now, their reaction to that is they have to go sign Manny Machado to try and reverse that trend. His reaction to that, though, is what? I see nothing but winning on the horizon in San Diego? Or, hey, nobody else was giving me $300 million guaranteed. 888 say ESPN is the telephone number. We'll get to the calls here before we take our first break because we got Jay Bilas coming up at the bottom of the hour. I want to know what you think, and we're certainly going to talk Duke, North Carolina, coming up with Jay and Zion Williamson taking on the Heels for the first time. But let's get to the phones right now and talk to Josh in Newark, who joins us first on the Stephen A. Smith Show this afternoon on ESPN Radio. What's up, Joshua?
How you doing, Bob? Thank you for taking my call. All right. I just want to get – I feel like all the analysis on Machado's, like, I think it's taken over proportion. I think his contract actually works for the Padres. You know, like, it's a 10-year contract. Obviously, they're not looking to win this year. You brought up Las Vegas going from 76 to 78 wins. They're not looking to win this year. It's from 2020 and beyond. That's when the top prospects all come up, Fernando Tatis Jr., and all the major prospects come up. I feel like it works for the team.
Well, it has to work for them. I mean, I agree. This is not to question what their motivation is. I'm questioning what his motivation is. I mean, you think for 1 second he signed this contract because he thinks the Padres have a great farm system? Or do you think he signed this contract because nobody else is guaranteeing him $300 million? Exactly right. Yeah. It's for the money.
Yeah.
100%. You know, and to me, I guess, here's my question. Who would you rather be? Would you rather be – now, I ask this coming from the standpoint of none of us in the real world can in any way relate to what's going on in Manny Machado's mind. Like right now, I would love it if somebody gave me an extra $3,000 to put in my kid's 529 plan. So the idea that there's a difference between 170, 200, 250, $300 million, I mean, to me, that's monopoly money. I can't even conceive of what being offered $100 million would be like, much less being offered $300 million. But with that being the perspective, I ask this question. Who would you rather be, J.D. Martinez or Manny Machado? Would you rather be a guy you'd rather be Manny Machado? You'd rather play in complete obscurity. No one in America cares about your team. You're making $300 million. You got all the money, but you will not play in the postseason. You got no chance to win a World Series, at least anytime in the near future. You are going to be playing all your games at 10:30 at night when 80% of the baseball fans have turned off the lights and have gone to bed and have already watched their teams on the East Coast play. Other than maybe, fantasy fans checking the stats, you are a complete non-entity. Nobody east of the Mississippi is going to see you swing a bat other than maybe the 3 games you come in to play their team on an East Coast road trip. Or you're J.D. Martinez, and you've got 60% of Manny Machado's money, but you're hitting in the middle of the Red Sox order, and you're winning World Series, and you're riding the duck boats, and all of the games that you play are relevant, and you're on Sunday Night Baseball, and you're playing in front of a jam-packed stadium every night that lives and dies with every pitch and every inning. Who would you rather be? I would rather be J.D. Martinez. I would rather have a lot less money and be playing a lot more meaningful games and winning a lot more than having the most guaranteed money and being in the witness protection program. That's just me.
You can compare the Boston Red Sox to the San Diego Padres. The Padres have been the franchise since '69. They never won a World Series. So I feel like it was a correct move in their part.
It was definitely the correct move in their part. I am not questioning their motivation. I get why they did what they did. I'm asking why he did what he did. And to me, the answer is very simple. There is nothing about going to the San Diego Padres that could mean anything to Manny Machado other than the fact that they gave him $300 million. They met the asking price, so they got him. Right? If the Yankees had offered him $225 to $250, you think he would have come? No chance. They didn't even bother making an offer. They weren't going to come anywhere near $300 million because I am sure, when they met with him and talked with his agent, learned all they needed to learn about Manny Machado. He's not about winning. This is not about being a champion. This is not about etching your legacy. This is about how much money can I make? And that's it. If that's his motivation, God bless him. Have that go be his motivation. I wouldn't be happy to be a fan rooting for a team where my best player was only about the dollars. I'll give you a perfect example. I call the Jets on the radio here in New York. There will always be a little bit of an asterisk in the minds, I think, of many Jet fans when they talk about the legacy of Darrelle Revis, who's one of the top 5 Jets of all time. From a talent perspective, absolutely. He is a legend. He is a Ring of Honor level legend. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. But he was never about anything other than where is his next dollar coming from. And he forced his way to Tampa and forced his way into a trade because he was never going to sign for anything less than what the only team out there at the time was willing to give him, which was basically starting quarterback money to not play quarterback. And then he was a mercenary and went to New England and won a ring there before coming back to the Jets and kind of, having his career wrap up in not so wonderful fashion. But the fact that he didn't spend his whole career with the Jets when they were willing to pay him reasonable money, not insane money, but reasonable money, and he took, now look, God bless him. He took the money. He got every last dollar that he could have milked out of his career, and he has more money in the bank than if he would have stayed his entire career with the Jets. There's no question. But his legacy as a legendary player with the Jets, he is never going to be remembered the way like a Joe Namath or a Joe Klecko or a Don Maynard or a Wayne Krebet or some of the guys who I think Jet fans identify with as being like their Mount Rushmore players. They're always going to say, from an ability standpoint, Darrelle Revis is as good as it gets, but he didn't really want to be one of us the whole way. He wanted money. Drew in Jersey joins us next year on ESPN Radio on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hey, Drew.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good.
Quick point. I don't understand why people get so mad that these guys want to go after the money. I get what you're saying because I'm an athlete. I played all the way collegiately football. So I get where you're coming from, but on the flip side of the coin, like at the end of the day, these guys got families to provide for. They got a lifestyle to keep up. At the end of the day, you got to go after the money because I heard you talk about regular people and regular jobs. If you're offered a double your salary from a competitor company, but they may not be in as many markets as ESPN or as respected as ESPN, let's be real. You're going to go after the money because you have a certain value that you put on yourself, and you want to be properly compensated for that.
Yeah, here's the question. And double my salary is probably not really the accurate apples to apples comparison. Would I take like a 10% raise or a 15% raise to go to a competitor where I know no one would hear or see anything that I do? No, I would not.
So let me ask you this question. Don't you have enough confidence in yourself that maybe your mindset is, I can change things? Because let's not forget it was Toby Gwynn that used to play for the Padres, right?
Okay.
Couldn't Manny's mindset be, okay, I'm going to be the next Tony Gwynn. I'm going to be the guy that starts this franchise, moving forward. They've been losing for so long. I'm going to be that guy. That's going to be my legacy, that 20 years from now, people will say, okay, once Machado came, other people came, winning started happening, changing the culture.
Yeah, and that's the exact opposite of what you just started this call off, Drew, saying. You said you don't blame somebody for just going out for the money. He didn't go to San Diego to be the next Tony Gwynn. He didn't go to San Diego to try and change the culture of that organization. He knows the culture of the organization he's walking into. It's been a 65-win culture.
We can't judge these guys because we're not asking them. We're not in their heads. But at the end of the day, let's be real. Take the money because you don't know when your career is going to be over.
All right. And
Take
you know what?
Money.
And I completely and totally respect if that is your opinion and that's where you wanted him to go. He took the money. In my opinion, as a sports talk show host, when I look at this from a sports perspective, I absolutely have the right to make a judgment about that. That is the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. If you miss any of the show today, go check it out on demand. The Stephen A. Smith Podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One, what's in your wallet? We'll take a quick break. We'll get back to the phones at 888-SAY-ESPN. Definitely want to get as many opinions as possible in over the next 90-plus minutes. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little Duke, North Carolina with Jay Bilas, who's calling the game tonight, Sonic Blockbuster on ESPN. So it's Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Smith on ESPN News, Channel 80 on Sirius XM, ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, the Listen tab, always available on the app as well. So a lot of different ways that you can listen to the show and get in touch with us. 888-SAY-ESPN is the telephone number. Jay Bilas coming up next. Talk Duke UNC on ESPN Radio.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A.
729-3776. Need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't just buy any seat. Get a Vivid seat. How much money you got in your wallet right now? Check out Vivid Seats and find out what it's going to cost you for a ticket if you want to buy one on the secondary market to get into Duke UNC at Cameron tonight. And Jay Bilas was going to call this Sonic Blockbuster for us on ESPN, along with Dan Schulman joins us now on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Jay, I don't know I have enough money in the 529 plans for my kids to go to Duke. Then I would need to maybe get money out of my wallet to buy a ticket for this game tonight.
Well, in the words of Antonio Brown, if you do have the money, hit my phone. Hit my phone. Because you can sit next to Dan Schulman tonight.
Is this as much hype as you can remember there being because of this freshman class at Duke going into a Duke UNC game?
No, it's more. This is the most this rivalry's ever seen, and something that has been big from the time I played in it 30-some years ago is bigger than ever, and it keeps getting bigger. So this is the biggest it's ever been. It's not just the biggest I've seen; it's the biggest it's ever been.
That's
and,
great.
It's
funny. You mentioned. I mean, everybody always says this to guys when they bring the legends by, like at Radio Row at the Super Bowl. Could you ever have imagined that this would become what it's become? When you actually are that guy, you are from that era where Duke, North Carolina, was kind of in its infancy, and the DNA was planted to turn it into what it has now become. But looking back 30 years ago, could you have ever imagined that it would have grown into now what you're going to experience tonight?
Well, I couldn't have imagined college sports would grow to being what it is now. That I wouldn't have imagined that, the coaches in this rivalry would be making $6, $7, $8 million a year. The amount of money poured into this endeavor would be like this, and it would become a multi-billion-dollar industry. When I played in the rivalry, Michael Jordan was at North Carolina, and it wasn't this big. So seeing the attention that is drawn to this, not just in this country but worldwide, it's ridiculous. I mean, the amount of coverage, the amount of people that are here, the celebrities that are going to be in the building. It's hard to wrap your head around how big this has gotten. And look, it's great for the rivalry. It's great for the sport. I think the players are going to enjoy it, but it's a lot, man. It is a lot to process.
Jay Bilas, he'll have the call tonight of Duke, North Carolina on ESPN at 9 Eastern, a Sonic blockbuster. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, as it always is. All right, let's get to the game. Every time I've called a Duke game this season, you're at shoot-around, you talk to the opposing coach, they all say the same thing. We have to get back on defense. We can't have live ball turnovers. Duke lives in transition. They're in the top 5 in America in points off turnovers, fast break points, and no one seems to be able to do it. So what is the formula tonight for North Carolina, especially on the road, to stay in this game and avoid that avalanche that it seems like Duke has at some point against everyone that they play?
I think for North Carolina, they've been turning the ball over a little bit more this year than they do in a normal year or sort of a common year for them. So I think when you play a team like Duke, your offense has to help your defense. It's not just about getting back. It's about not putting yourself in a position where Duke can play ahead of your defense. Because they're deadly in transition just when they inbound the ball after a made basket. That's when you have to get back. But the other times, you cannot give them a head start. You can't give them a run out. So a bad shot is the same thing as a turnover. Your offense has to be good so that your defense can get set more often than not. And then it's going to be a rebounding fight. Carolina's a different kind of rebounding team than they've been. They don't have the kind of strength at the rim that they've had in the past, but they're still a great rebounding team. They're one of the top 5 rebounding teams in the country. But their wings do a good job of rebounding. Cam Johnson, 6'8", 6'9", and Kenny Williams sticks his nose in there and rebounds. And then Carolina's got to do a great job from the three-point line. They're a three-point shooting team. They're not an interior team like they've been in the past. They're a three-point shooting team. So they're going to have to handle pressure and come off screens, finding shots from three. And if they can shoot it from the catch spot, they got to make them. Kenny Williams has to make them.
I was going to say, you mentioned Kenny Williams, but I don't know if he would be the guy that would fit this question. But is there a guy for Carolina tonight that is that X factor that has to win his matchup and maybe play above his head for them to win this game?
Well, I wouldn't say above his head. Kobe White has his matchup against Trey Jones. If Trey Jones sort of is the dominant defensive player that he's been, Duke wins because Kobe White is that important in his scoring for North Carolina. And then I really think, I think Cam Johnson's going to play well because he has been playing well and he's a great player. But I think Kenny Williams is the guy. He's capable of having a 20-point game, which he did last year against these guys. He's always been a really good shooter. He's slumped a little bit shooting. He's been inconsistent, but he's capable and he's really good. This is the kind of game where I think you could kind of forget about how good he can be and has been, and he could wind up coming out with a great game in this one.
It seems like from Zion's standpoint that the only time he ever is less of a factor in a game than you would expect him to be is when he gets in foul trouble, which he is prone to do. There have been some games where he's picked up his second early or his third early in the second half, and Coach K has been forced to sit him down. If he isn't in foul trouble, is there any way that you can see a team, Carolina or anyone else, stopping him from just imposing his will on the game?
Well, you can't stop him from putting numbers up. I mean, the guy's averaging 24 in the ACC and shooting 70% from the field. And, I think you lay off, you try to play off of him and he takes that space up and blows by you or spins off you. He's going to score. I think it's can you keep him from going crazy on you? Can you keep him from making momentum plays and offensive rebounding, things like that? keep them away from the easy stuff. That's the issue. And then you're going to have to make them prove it over the top. Look, Duke shot 13 of 21 from three, if I remember right, against Virginia. But Virginia's game plan was great. If they make 13 of 21, you're going to lose. You have to kind of pick. And to me, you got to take away the lane, take away the rim. And then if they make their shots, you congratulate them and move on. But you're not gonna keep Zion Williamson from scoring. He's going to score. The only time he hasn't scored is when he got poked in the eye against Florida State and didn't play in the second half. That's the only way to stop him.
And they still found a way. I called that game. They still found a way to get the job done. I think in large part because he attracts so much attention. And even from a media standpoint, I'm not sure if people understand how good especially R.J. Barrett is. He put up a triple-double this past Saturday, something only 4 Duke players have ever done. If it's possible to be a quiet superstar, is that Barrett to you?
Well, I don't, Bob, I don't foreclose the fact that he could still be the number one pick. I think he may be the better NBA player. Zion Williamson's a bigger attraction, but R.J. Barrett's built for the NBA. I mean, he's James Harden. And he shoots it pretty well. He's not a great shooter, but he shoots it pretty well. And he's going to get much better as a shooter because he's got a stroke that can be repeating. And the more he works on it, the better he's going to get. But that dude is legit. I mean, he's averaging like 23 a game. He's leading the ACC in scoring, and he's not, as you say, he's not talked about as much just because Zion is such a phenomenon. But heck, being the second best player in this draft, if that's the way it turns out, isn't too bad. The number 2 pick in some of these drafts has done pretty well, and people kind of tend to forget Michael Jordan was the 3rd pick in the '84 NBA draft, and he did pretty well.
Yeah, I've heard of him. He's not bad. Jay Bilas was going to call the game tonight on ESPN, Sonic Blockbuster at 9 Eastern, Duke and North Carolina for a couple of more minutes. One other strategic question. I was talking with Dick Vitale and Mike Krzyzewski this past weekend because we called the North Carolina State game, and we asked about the Virginia game plan. We asked about what they have faced this year. He said, look, we're shooting 31% from three-point land as a team. Teams want us to shoot threes. To that end, are you surprised more teams don't zone Duke just to try and see if they can bait them into being a little bit more of a perimeter shooting team, which obviously is not their strength?
No, I don't think zone is necessarily the right answer. I think protecting the lane is. When you're not a zone team and it's not a primary defense for you, because Duke has playmakers that they can put in the middle of the zone, both Williamson and Barrett, they operate in the middle of the zone better than most players I've seen. And so you're really opening yourself up to a couple of things that they do best. One is get the ball to those guys and get matchups in a zone that are favorable to Duke, and then their offensive rebounding capabilities. Then you don't have pinpoint responsibility on blockouts. Look, one thing about zone, Bob Knight told me this years ago, and it's one of the best things I've heard on zone, was he said, if you play me man, you decide who guards my best player. You play me zone, I decide who guards my best player. And that's sort of the way it works with this Duke team, that Coach K can move some of his pieces around and find the matchup areas in the zone that he wants, and it works out pretty well for him offensively.
Jay, it's great stuff, and I'll see you over the weekend, and then Monday night you and I are calling Kansas State together. So that could be that could end up being the game that determines the Big 12 title. Who knows? So I'm looking forward to that one as well.
Looking forward to it, brother. We'll see you then.
All right, have fun tonight. It'll be great.
Thank you.
All right, that's Jay Bilas. He will have the call tonight along with Dan Schulman of Duke, North Carolina, the Blockbuster at 9 Eastern from Cameron. We'll get back to your telephone calls coming up at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. And this college basketball season, it is heating up. And that means we turn our attention to the Wendy's Wooden Watch, the John R. Wooden Men's Player of the Year Award presented by Wendy's. It's the most prestigious individual honor in college basketball, awarded to the country's most outstanding player who is also making progress towards earning a degree. Go to ESPN.com and search Wooden Watch for the list of Wooden Award late season top 20 nominees to watch as this season rolls on. 2 of them play for Duke, of course, Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett. They lead Duke against North Carolina tonight on ESPN. Coverage begins at 9 Eastern. Brought to you by Wendy's, proud sponsor of the 2019 John R. Wooden Player of the Year Award. We'll come back to the telephones, and then at the top of the hour, Jeff Passan, who broke the Manny Machado news yesterday about Manny Machado, Bryce Harper, everything else going on in baseball free agency. as well as camps are opening up. Pitchers and catchers have all reported. Next week, we're going to have some baseball games to watch. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Need game ticket?
Earlier today that the Padres didn't even have 100% certainty that they had Manny Machado until they saw your tweet.
I don't know which Padres exactly that covers, Bob. But,
the owners. That's what I was told.
Yeah, I think the important people, and not to denigrate anybody's importance, but I think that, let's put it this way, I think the decision makers knew that they had Manny Machado, and perhaps they had not spread the news at that point, but I was glad to be the bearer of good news for them.
The level of surprise when you had heard it's official, I know I can tweet this out, he's going to the San Diego Padres, was what?
When I hit tweet, I said, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And in a good way, because I think the world wasn't expecting that either. When I heard it for the first time, and the first person told me, I said, "Really?" And I had heard, Bob, over the last couple of weeks that the Padres were making a really big push for Manny Machado. But in the back of my head, I said, Manny Machado's a Miami guy. San Diego's a 6-hour flight or so from Miami. Is he really going to want to be that far away? Is he going to want to be a West Coast guy? And in the end, what it came down to was guaranteed money. And I understand exactly why it came down to that, because as good as the Chicago White Sox offer was, and it was a good offer, it wasn't $300 million guaranteed, and from the start of free agency, that's exactly what Manny Machado wanted.
Where do you think the Yankees dropped off officially in this scenario? I mean, I know they had that meeting with him. Maybe it was at that meeting where they got a vibe that, look, this is just not our guy. We're good. We've got Andujar. Didi's coming back. We're going to check some boxes here. We're not going anywhere near $300 million. Or do you think that there was still the rumor that the Yankees might be involved that helped drive this price up eventually? Where did the Yankees factor into this whole process, and were they ever even close to actually being his landing spot? Because all you ever heard was, ultimately, in his heart of hearts, he wanted to be a Yankee, and now he ends up in San Diego.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was speculation, honestly. Look, the Yankees were open-minded about it. The Yankees thought that if Manny Machado's market absolutely collapses and he's looking for a soft landing spot on a shorter-term deal, they might be perfect for that because he fits really well into their window right now, even though they've got Gregorius and even though Tulowitzki looks really good so far. That being said, once it was shown that the Padres were up in the high 200s, and once the White Sox went to 250, the Yankees weren't ever going to be a serious player in there. They were looking for a value deal. There was not a value deal there to be had. This was going to be a straight-up market deal. And when that was the case, the Yankees said, I hope you have a wonderful time in lovely San Diego. And Manny Machado understood that because, honestly, like, being a Yankee is great in many respects. Chief among them, being that the Yankees are damn good right now.
Yep.
But beyond that, you're not going to take a discount to go to the team that makes more money than anybody else. Like, that's counterintuitive. The Yankees, the team that's bringing in $600+ million a year in revenue, suddenly wanting to go bargain shopping.
I get that. On the flip side, though, you can see why the Yankees would put a value on Manny Machado because, I mean, he would be certainly one of their better, maybe not even their best player. He's a franchise-changing player for San Diego. But, I mean, I have to think for the Yankees, there is some element at play here of, oh, man, Judge, Sanchez, at some point Didi, like guys like this, we're going to have to start paying them. We've got Giancarlo Stanton. We're still, I mean, how could they not still be regretting the contract that they signed for the center fielder that has been in the witness protection program the past couple of years? So that also must have played, I would think, into their thinking as well.
It does, Bob, but let's not understate how much money the New York Yankees actually have. Like, that is a really important factor in all of this. And I'm not saying that the top end of the market not buying up superstar players is bad for baseball. I actually think it's great for baseball that teams like the San Diego Padres, which have one of the smallest media markets in the country, can go out and spend $144 million on Eric Hosmer one year and follow up the next year by getting Manny Machado for $300 million. That being said, I don't know that other teams out there are as willing to replicate that as maybe they should be. And I hope that fans hold those ownerships accountable, because if the Padres can do this, Bob, anybody can do this. And that's the moral of the story here. That's why Major League Baseball is sitting back with a smile on its face as the Players Association says, well, you know, it feels like there's a messed up free agent market. Yeah, for mid-level players, there is. But when the top end of the market, the Chicago White Sox and the San Diego Padres are the two finalists, that does show that teams can go out and spend if they're willing to. It's a matter of that willingness, though.
One of our baseball insiders, top of the list, Jeff Passan here on ESPN. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Smith on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Channel 80 on Sirius XM, ESPN News. A lot of ways to listen, interact with the show. We'll get back to the telephones. I'm not sure, Jeff, you heard what I had to say in hour number one, so unvarnished, I will ask you this question and get your take as someone who covers the sport at the highest level. What do you think it says about Manny Machado that he is now going to play for the San Diego Padres for the highest price tag?
I think it says that he assigned a value to himself, and that he, as somebody who is proud of the work that he's put in, who is stubborn by nature, and who believes that he is worth a particular amount, was sticking hard and fast by that, despite all of the rumors, despite all of the conjecture, the market's collapsing, the players are being greedy, they're not going to get what they want, they play a kid's game. No, Manny Machado has a gift. There's no question about that. But he also works really hard. He's worked hard to become one of the best third basemen in baseball, to become one of the best hitters in baseball. And the idea that he was going to sell himself short is I think, it goes to the core of who he is. He doesn't sell himself short. And for all those lapses, and look, the lapses are bad, whether it's the spiking of Jesus Aguilar, not running out the fly ball, the ball off the wall in the World Series. I mean, there were a number of them in October. In spite of all of those, I think Manny Machado saw himself a particular way and wanted to partner up with a team that saw him the exact same way, and that team was the San Diego Padres.
Am I wrong to say, as a baseball fan, that I would like a guy that's worth this kind of money to assign a little bit more of his priority system to winning? And that I don't know how many other teams, ultimately, if he had lowered his price tag a little bit, would have gotten into the mix. But rather than being a guy that wants to be in the spotlight, play meaningful games, play on Sunday Night Baseball, compete for championships, that he has a very strong chance that he's going to spend the better part of the first 10 years of his baseball career, if not longer, playing 60 games for the Dodgers and playing in one fall classic, and the other 9.8 years of his first decade in baseball are going to be spent in witness protection, playing completely irrelevant games for teams that nobody really. And now, I mean, he has now pulled a Robbie Cano. He is going to go, 85% of America is going to be in bed when he's playing in front of 30,000 people in San Diego, playing meaningless baseball for probably one of the lowest Q rating organizations, not just in baseball, but in the world of pro sports. And he goes there just because they gave him more money than anyone else. Am I wrong to say maybe I would want my superstar to care a little bit more about winning?
Here's the fault, I think, in your premise, and it's that the San Diego Padres are going to continue to be the mediocre organization they've been over the last decade or so, and frankly, over the majority of their history. I understand that prospects are not sexy. They're not big names. Right. We don't know a lot about them. They're going against competition that's going to be weeded out and never make the major leagues.
But they've got them.
But time after time, Bob, when you are on top of the prospect list and you have the best farm system in baseball, you almost inevitably end up being really good. I can go year after year recently and show you examples of that. The Atlanta Braves were at the top last year. They went out and won a division, and they haven't even emptied out their farm system yet. Kansas City Royals were on top when Hosmer and Moustakas and, Danny Duffy and others were coming up. They went back-to-back World Series, won a World Series. Houston Astros have been near the top. The Chicago Cubs were at the top. I can go on. And the San Diego Padres are not just there right now, but are there with the type of volume and depth that we haven't seen in an organization in a really long time. They have high upside kids. They have a lot of kids. They have kids who are close. They have kids who are far. So this isn't like they're all going to come in one wave. This is going to be sustained. And if the sustenance is as strong as people inside that organization and outside believe it's going to be, the Padres are not going to be irrelevant. They're going to be challenging the Dodgers year in, year out for the National League West crown.
Jeff Passan, our senior baseball insider here with me on ESPN Radio. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. I guess I probably should have prefaced my conjecture, my, criticism of that theory with the Padres with you on giving you just a little insight into me. I'm a Mets fan. So just understand my perspective, my cynicism when somebody says, we've got the best farm system. I mean, look at the talent that we're going to put in the major leagues for the next 5 years to surround Manny Machado. I've heard it before. And
listen,
can you excuse my cynicism based at least on that?
It is a very New York perspective. And I'm not saying this like insultingly at all. I live in the Midwest. I grew up in Cleveland. I live in Kansas City now. It's a very New York thing to equate wanting to play in a big city with wanting to win. I don't think it's a character, and I don't think Manny Machado's hiding or anything like that, but I don't think it's a character flaw either if you know that you are likeliest to achieve your best in a particular situation. There are some guys out there who do cringe under the lights, but who can play and play at extremely high levels in places where the pressure's not quite as good. Like, life's a lot better when you don't have the New York media horde surrounding you. I think that every athlete will say that the pressure that brings makes their job that much more difficult. But then in October, when you've been through it, maybe you are better attuned to it, and maybe you are likelier to thrive in that situation. I think it can go both ways, but I have trouble looking at a player who chooses, and my opinion, by the way, has evolved on this. I used to be very similar to you. When Troy Tulowitzki signed his deal with the Rockies, I wrote a column that said, hey, man, like, what are you doing? You're resigning yourself to mediocrity and irrelevance. And I regret writing that, honestly, because my opinion has changed on it. As I've gotten older, I've seen the way that the human mind works and the way that people know themselves a lot better than I'm going to ever know them, what makes them tick, what makes them achieve, what allows them to be who they are. And I just trust in those people's decision-making a lot more than I do being armchair quarterback.
Yeah, I am very proud to admit and say to you, I like your Tulowitzki point to this day. I have not evolved one bit, so I'm still a Neanderthal where that's concerned. I'm big city New York guy. He didn't want to win. He wanted to go to the witness protection program, and he got $300 million to do it. So sayonara, Manny Machado. We'll care about you again maybe in 3 years when some of these prospects start to show up. We'll see if they do.
No. Let me say one more thing here, Bob, and this is a really important point to make. If you sign for less and go to a bigger city, you know they can trade you. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. You get your money when you can get your money. And if it doesn't work out there, you'll get dealt. Like, that's just the way that it goes. If the Padres don't win, they're not going to want Manny Machado on that payroll. They're going to look to cut payroll, and that's when he'll go to the big city and get his chance. We're seeing it right now with Robinson Cano.
Yeah, and he'll be the next Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, they'll pick up some money, and he'll end up playing maybe for the Yankees anyway. Who knows? Hey, before I let you go.
The next Cano. I mean, there's time after time where we see that these deals, especially if they don't work out precisely like the club wanted, is going to get rid of the guy, and he'll end up in that big market where they can take on that deal.
Jeff Passan with us here on ESPN Radio. All right, real quick, because we got a couple of more minutes to go. Bryce Harper. So when is he a Philly, or when does that final domino fall and maybe he shocks the world and ends up someplace where we weren't expecting?
I Part of me hopes that happens just because the story would be amazing, and I'm always here for the story. But I think the Phillies are the favorite at this point. They make the most sense. They have the money to go out and do so. They've shown the most interest, at least that we've seen publicly so far. The Giants are lurking around. The Nationals, I'm never going to say no to them. The White Sox, they were willing to go 250-plus on Machado with 320 if he had hit certain levels to up his plate appearances, get options for the 9th and 10th seasons. The White Sox are out right now. I'm not going to say any of those teams are out until the ink is dry on the cup drop. But right now, if I am a betting man, it's the Phillies, and it's more a matter at this point of just how much risk are they willing to take to try and squeeze Harper. If they feel like they're the only team that's offering 10-plus years and $300+ million, or even if they're even there at this point, they say we're not going a penny above because we don't believe you have more, go ahead and call our bluff.
Are Harper and Machado on an island by themselves, or the fact that those two seem to be finally, Machado is signed, maybe Harper is imminent, does that finally start some dominoes falling with the Marwin Gonzaleses and the Keuchels and the Kimbrels, Adam Jones, and I guess some other guys that are still out there that are a tier below, but are still getting some big money. I would think eventually when somebody signs them.
是你告诉他们别的村儿土地流转1200，我就想问问是哪个村儿啊？
Now, to me, the big question is never at the top. When everyone was saying the top of the market was collapsing, I'm like, I still think they're going to make $300 million. I believe in star-level players, and those are star-level players. The guys that come below, though, the middle, the upper middle-class types, the Keuchels, the Kimbrels, the Gonzaleses, I do wonder about them. And I do wonder if they're going to continue getting squeezed the way that they have been, because that's what's happened with baseball this offseason. And you know what the second, before Machado signed yesterday, the biggest contract was Patrick Corbin at $140 million. The second biggest one was Nathan Eovaldi at $68 million. Yeah, the $80 to $100 million deals, I don't know if those exist anymore. It feels like you're either really, really good and really, really well compensated, or you're just a couple tiers down below that.
If Harper gets the 300, we expect him to also get Machado got it. And let's say Marwin Gonzalez and Keuchel and Kimbrel eventually sign for something reasonable. Is it the amount of time that has gone by still enough to have the union up in arms about how this has all gone down? Or will the money eventually being there get the union to back off a little bit on being angry? So hopefully this doesn't become a domino effect towards a work stoppage eventually, because, at least ownership ultimately can turn around and say, hey, these guys are getting paid. It took a while for it to happen, but they're getting paid.
It's funny because if they do get paid, and a lot of guys, if you look at the number of major league caliber players who have gotten minor league, like Tyler Clippard today signed a minor league deal. Tyler Clippard's a big league reliever. And there have been quite a few of those deals this offseason. And I think that bothers the Players Association. I think players who in the past would have gotten 2 years for $10 million, getting 1 year for $2.5 million is the type of thing that bothers players. But I think the ones who should be really more angry, honestly, about how long this has taken should be Major League Baseball, because the NFL and the NBA, and I understand their cap system, so it's different, but the frenzy surrounding their signing periods at the beginning of free agency really is something to behold. Like, it's a fun few days. Baseball doesn't have that, and I think baseball is missing out on a real opportunity with that and on making the offseason a lot more interesting instead of just waiting. There's nothing worse than waiting, and we've been waiting, Bob, for 3.5 months for this.
I was going to say, the Jeff Passans of the world are like on your 7 cell phones starting Thanksgiving, and you still don't have answers, and it's Valentine's Day.
I just want a freaking vacation.
Right, exactly.
Like, that's all. Just give me like a couple of days where nothing's going to happen. Let me take my wife somewhere nice, get away from the kids. Like, just allow that where I don't have to be married to my cell phone instead. Like,
no, you're screwed. You have no chance.
If she ever serves me with divorce papers, the reason is going to be because you cheated on me with your cell phone. Like, it's terrible.
On that uncomfortable note, Jeff, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bob. It was fun.
Be good. Yeah, be fun. Could talk to you all afternoon. That is Jeff Passan, our senior MLB insider here on ESPN. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. So there's a lot out there. Duke, North Carolina. Could talk a little Le'Veon Bell. Haven't gotten to that yet. Obviously, Manny Machado and all the free agent news in baseball. 888-SAY-ESPN. 888-729-3776. Do you have frequent heartburn, like the kind where you have antacid stashed everywhere in case it pops up? You know what I mean. You keep some in your bag, your desk, your car, your nightstand. You have those chalky tablets ready for whenever and wherever heartburn strikes. Well, listen up. There is an easier way to deal with your heartburn. Prilosec OTC. Just one pill a day. It'll last 24 hours, zero heartburn. Kick your antacid habit. It's possible with Prilosec OTC. Use as directed for 14 days to treat frequent heartburn, and you'll get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. Snow falling outside here at the Seaport in New York, so what better time to talk baseball? There's just something about when you first start seeing those guys throw baseballs back and forth with palm trees swaying in the background that makes it seem like for us who live up here in the Northeast or the upper Midwest that at some point it's not going to be 30 degrees out. So those of you that live where palm trees are all the time and where Manny Machado is going to now play baseball, maybe you get some of our bitterness. That's where it comes from. Let's go to Eli in New Jersey. Joins us next on ESPN Radio on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hey, Eli.
How are you today?
Good.
Good. So I want to say on Manny Machado signing, you said before that this is a win for small market teams. This definitely is. Machado, he saw the small market team. He saw the money there. He saw the potential there. He knew he could be the face in San Diego. Me, from New Jersey, I'm a Yankee fan. So obviously, at this point, he didn't go, but I see where he's coming from. It's the money, it's the 10 years, and he sees the potential. And I don't think that you can blame him for this decision.
No, all I've said all along is, and if it's all about the money, it's all about the money. It wouldn't be all about the money for me. Let's go to Daniel in South Carolina. Joins us next on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Bob. How are you, sir?
Good.
Hey, I was going to tell you, I think the Machado decision is really more laziness than it is about the money. And here's why I say that. He could have went to Chicago and with the escalators made more money. He could have went to the Yankees and won. But he goes to San Diego because the money's guaranteed. It's a great market to be in, like you said, palm trees all year long. And if they don't win, it won't be his fault because they haven't won in years. If they do win, maybe everyone will say, well, they won because of him. So he's really in a no-lose situation. It was the path of least resistance.
And all of that, to me, has nothing to do with wanting to be a winner. You know, that's fine. If that's his priority system, but I don't want to hear him now talk about, I want to win it. If you wanted to win a championship, you're not going to San Diego. You're going there because they offered you $300 million and nobody else would guarantee you that amount of money, and that's it. And so now you will be in complete obscurity as far as most sports fans are concerned, playing when 80% of the country has gone to bed. And, it's funny, and this has part to do with geography, part to do with the Q rating of his team, part to do with the sport itself, but think of the stars of baseball. Think of the stars of sports. And this plays into now what I think the impact is going to be on Manny Machado going to San Diego. I don't think in my lifetime there has been a better athlete that is less known in any sport than Mike Trout. Right? He plays for a team that never wins anything. He plays at 10:30 Eastern time. He's never on national television. I mean, Mike Trout at some point, I'm wondering, when it eventually gets to the point where he's going to get his swipe at it, is he just going to take the money? Or is there a chance that he may prioritize playing in the spotlight in October baseball a little bit more? I'll be fascinated to see what he eventually does. Because Mike Trout could walk down Fifth Avenue tomorrow and nobody would know who he is. And if you think of the Mike Trout of any other sport, all other sports, I think more people would recognize Sidney Crosby or Ovechkin than would recognize Mike Trout in, the average city in America. And Manny Machado is signing up for that. He is signing up for complete anonymity, being in San Diego, but he got $300 million. So, God bless him. John in the Bronx joins us next on ESPN Radio. Good, John. How are you?
Doing, Bob? I'm all right, thank you. I have a question for you. What is Manny Machado supposed to say if they ask him if he's there to win or not? Because if he's honest about it, he's going to get killed for it. And if he lies, he's going to get killed also. So I feel like this decision is definitely about money. He came from a background where he didn't have means. I read in an article that at times he didn't know where his next meal was going to come from. So He definitely has to take the money and secure his family for generations to come.
Was San Diego the only team offering him a contract? Let's just play this back. Let's rewind this. Let's say 2 months ago, he says to his agent, remember, he can say anything he wants to his agent. The agent's job is to execute what the client wants him to do. Agent works for the client, not the other way around. The client doesn't work for the agent. So he says to his agent at Thanksgiving, I want to be a Yankee. Make it happen. He'd be a Yankee. That's on the agent to then make it happen. So I don't know how much money he would have gotten, but I think it would have been enough to feed his family. He went to and you're right. He's certainly well within his rights to maximize his earning potential and get the most money that he can possibly get, just as long as we understand that that's what this was. He is signing up to not win, at least not anytime soon. Matt in Philly joins us next on ESPN Radio with Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. Hey, Matt.
Bobby, how are you?
Good.
I got to say, right now I'm a risk analyst for the firm I work, but one day I want to do what you do. It's the dream, the play-by-play for the Jets, my man.
It's fun.
But, yeah, you're telling me. But I call today to really hear, I know it's baseball primarily here, but I want to hear quickly about your Jets take and if Mike Maccagnan can get the job done. I mean, he had Darnold. He traded for 3. He fell to him. Jamal Adams fell to him. But other than that, I could say he has failed as a GM. Is he going to be able to take this team to the next level in the offseason?
Well, to not give him any credit for Sam Darnold falling to him, he did trade second-round draft choices to get up to the number 3 spot, to get one of those quarterbacks. To me, if you're a general manager in this day and age, in a very heavy, deep, talented quarterback draft like last year's draft was, and you can move up to get the quarterback you want and not give up any future first-round picks to do it, you deserve an immense amount of credit as a general manager for that. So I give him credit for that. I think he deserves credit for that. The entire Jet offseason, I think, for the most part, is now going to be analyzed, at least by most fans, on whether or not one of those 2 Steelers ends up coming. Are they going to pony up money for Le'Veon Bell now that the Steelers haven't tagged him? Are they going to make a trade for Antonio Brown? I think it's much more likely that they would pursue Bell just because they have the second most cap space and ultimately might have the most cap space available once they get rid of everybody that they're going to move on from when pro free agency starts. So that's just money. I think it's less likely that, I think the deal would have to be so Jets friendly to trade for Antonio Brown that I don't think it's going to get there. I don't think that someone's going to be able to get Antonio Brown for, a 5th or 6th round pick where they're just going to give him away. I think there will be a little bit of a bidding war. And if I'm the Steelers, I want there to be a bidding war. You certainly, you signed him. You still have him under contract. So you deserve to be compensated for a player of that ability moving on. You're not going to get anywhere near what he's worth because you have now broadcast to the whole world after meeting with him that you are putting him on the trading block. You're going to move him. So everybody knows he's going to get traded. So that obviously takes some of your leverage away. But I would think it's more likely that they go after Le'Veon Bell. And I think it'll be very interesting, whether it's the Jets or any other team in football, to see what Le'Veon Bell gets. Because if you're Le'Veon Bell, you sat out last year and bypassed $14 million and turned down a $70 million contract, which means to make sense of what you did last year, you have to sign a contract that's like a minimum of $90 million. Or else what'd you do last year? Now, who off of a complete year of inactivity is going to sign up to give Le'Veon Bell $90 million? Because the only way that what you did last year doesn't look foolish is if you get what the Steelers were offering plus another $14 million or so. So now you're in the mid-80s in millions of dollars, or else the math just doesn't work. You left $14 million out there that could have been yours. You sat out a year to then get what? Unless it's just ego and bitterness that makes you short-sighted. But to me, if Le'Veon Bell doesn't get at least what Todd Gurley got, if more, then what did he sit out for last year? And I don't know. I don't know if the Jets or maybe a handful of other teams that would be in the market for an impact player at that position are going to be willing to pony up that kind of money for a running back. Because what we see over and over and over again every year is running backs can be found. They can be had later in the draft. They can be had later in free agency. They can be had for cheaper. It's not a position with long-term durability. Once that tread starts to come off the tire, running backs sometimes go off a cliff. So is someone going to pony up over $85 million to $90 million for Le'Veon Bell for him to be able to make sense of what he did last year? My guess is no. My guess is ultimately he is going to sign for less than he would have gotten had he played last year and then gone to the market this year with $14 million extra in his pocket. I think ultimately he's going to regret the decision that he made last year. Get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline. Plus, if you missed any of our show today, go check it out on demand. The Stephen A. Smith Podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is rose bouquets for $29.99 from 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. As promised, we'll squeeze in a few more calls before the top of the hour before we have to say goodbye. And I wish another hour because I could take calls all day because there have been some good ones today. Let's go to Andy in Bayville. Joins us next year on ESPN Radio.
Hi,
Andy?
how you doing today,
good.
boss? I'm doing good, too. I'm calling. You actually answered my question when you compared Manny Machado to Trout because I was going to say the same thing. I think he's just going to fade out. He has a lot of, he's a great player, but now nobody's going to see him because he's not. I feel like he's going to fade out. So I was going to ask you a different question, if you don't mind.
Fire away.
I wanted to ask you about the Knicks.
Sure.
Do you think, like if we don't get KD, if we don't get Kyrie Irving, who else would the Knicks be able to go for?
Don't care. I mean, there are other guys on the list, like Klay Thompson, and I mean, there are certainly other guys to pursue. If they don't get at least one of those two guys, then this was a failure. You make the Kristaps Porzingis trade to set up what ultimately becomes a pass-fail judgment on whether or not you execute. You get either Durant or Kyrie Irving, and I think really Durant. I mean, to me, that's almost the Mendoza line. You either get Durant or you don't. If you get him, you passed. If you don't, you failed. That's the only reason you trade Porzingis. And I don't care about what they think Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be. I don't care about the lottery pick, although if they end up winning the lottery and getting Zion, that's going to be a different level star power than we've seen at the Garden in a long, long time. But all of that aside, the motivation for what they did with Porzingis is, to me, cut and dry, black and white, pass-fail. You're creating two max slots to go out and get two of those guys, and one of them almost has to be Kevin Durant, or you failed in trying to do what you've done now by trading Porzingis.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree.
That's it. And part of me hates that that's what the NBA has become. The NBA that I grew up watching would never in a million years have thought about, what if Bird and Magic played together? How great would that be? The league back then was based on blood rivalries between the top teams of the league. Now it's about, let me just go play with my buddy. I mean, drafting and developing players and kind of formulating a roster, all that is now out the window. NBA general managers are now college recruiters. They're trying to get celebrities to record scoreboard videos and bringing guys to steakhouses and showing them all the bling in their training facility and just recruiting free agents and hoping you get one guy who's going to convince one of his buddies to come play with them because now they're all buddies. And you know, all of those must-see rivalry games that I feel like I grew up on as a child of the 80s and 90s, that's gone. And I miss it terribly because I have to tell you, watching the NBA All-Star game, it didn't look a whole lot different to me than Rockets Thunder on a Wednesday night. The NBA All-Star game now probably most closely resembles its regular season action than any All-Star game in any sport, right? When you turn on the NBA All-Star game, what'd you see? I watched like part of the first quarter and I couldn't take it anymore. It's just a bunch of guys dunking, a bunch of guys shooting threes, nobody really playing any defense, crazy scoring, and, you know, shockingly similar to what some of the regular season games look like. That'll do it for today, the Stephen A. Smith Show. I'm Bob Wischusen. It was a lot of fun sitting in. Thanks a lot to Kat Pastor and Nuno Teixeira up in Bristol for pushing all the buttons. Jonathan Winthrop as well here for producing the show in New York. The rest of your week, enjoy it. And hopefully we'll talk to you soon again. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Smith. Had a great time. Thanks a lot to all the callers here on ESPN Radio.
Hey, what's up? It's Will Kane. Coming up right after Stephen A. Smith. Join us on The Will Kane Show live on ESPN.